Hey, what's up everybody? Today I will be reviewing over the 4 different Omnicells we have available in Dauntless Experimental. I have actually been able to give each and every single one a fair try to see and kinda understand how to use each one and how each one can play in a group composition, whether it be in just normal hunts or trials itself. I'd like to review over what each one can do and give my insight as to how people should be using each one, just from my first impressions. So, just a quick update. Every time I try to log into Hunting Grounds and play a little bit too much, or try to explain for too long, I end up crashing. So what I'm essentially just going to do is maybe provide some explanation as to what I think each Omnicell kind of represents and how they work, and hopefully you guys will be able to get some insight as to how each one is supposed to be used. I was able to use Bastion quite a bit, and let me read out the explanation for you guys. The instant is the leap forward and slam/burst, consuming all shields as a blast of energy on impact, doing damage and stagger damage to all nearby targets equal to the strength of the shield consumed. The passive is increase all shields received by 15%, reduce max health by 25%, but this health is replaced by a shield that fills up after 10 seconds, stacks twice. I was able to play around with Bastion, and I know in my previous video about the roadmap that I wouldn't really see Bastion be used that much and be viable from a competitive standpoint. However, there is utility that it can be used for, and that is stagger. You see, the whole idea of being able to hit multiple parts with one slam with this Torgadoro-esque legendary ability type of instant is that you can do a lot of stagger damage with one shot. Let's just assume that you have about 2,000 shield built up. Assuming your group composition includes a pike and you're using cunning, you have a really good chance to crit. So if you're hitting for 2k and you crit for 4k, and you hit multiple parts, which I've been able to hit at least 3 parts here, you can hit potentially for 12k stagger damage right from the get-go, which could prove to be very beneficial from any standpoint, regardless of what behemoth it may be. Getting that much stagger damage in the beginning, or maybe early to mid of the fight, is quite beneficial to killing the behemoth faster than normally would. And I do have to say, I do respect the thought put into this, because without the stagger damage, this Omnicell wouldn't be that viable at all, but since it does stagger damage, it is quite useful. It is very, very nice, especially if you're using weapons that don't contribute to stagger damage, like repeaters or chain blades when you're not really doing the Reaper's Dance finishing ability. In my honest opinion, Bastion can be used. It is a usable Omnicell. There could be different aspects I could have missed from my first impression regarding balancing compared to the other Omnicells, but based off my first impression, I do actually kind of like Bastion. Pair it up with a proper build revolving around Guardian, Fortress, Skarn weapons, or whatever, and it's a pretty decent Omnicell. It's pretty good, and not only that, it's pretty fun. Next up, we have the whole Discipline Omnicell. This class is literally just the full-on damage class. So let's review. Instant. Flaming Fist. Perform a quick parrying punch that deals 400 blaze damage. If you do absorb/parry an attack during this window, you do plus 300% damage and gain a stack of critical strike damage. The passive. Health is limited to 50% of max health, and healing received is reduced by 25%. Critical strike damage increased by 15%. Parrying with a Flaming Fist attack grants you 12.5% more critical strike damage. This effect stacks 4 times. Reaching 4 stacks makes you disciplined, increasing your critical strike chance by 50% for 20 seconds. When disciplined ends, stacks are cleared. This is a lot of damage. This Omnicell specializes in just damaging the living crap out of behemoths. Of course, you need to provoke them to actually attack you in order to make the best use of this Omnicell. However, after doing tests, this had the fastest kill time compared to all the other ones. By not really that large of a margin, but it was significant. Just the ability to stack crit chance and to push for massive amounts of crit damage on top of it, as well as being able to have an avenging overdrive-esque instant, is something that most people would definitely understand as meta. It would contribute a lot to solos, however, I have yet to see how well this would do in a group setting. I'd like to see. It depends on whether or not you can still stunlock or staggerlock a behemoth. But we shall see exactly what may happen. Alright, so the next one we have is Iceborn. The instant is throw an Ice Lance that does 1500 frost damage, double damage if thrown at full health. Grants ice armor for 8 seconds, providing plus 10% lifesteal and invulnerability. The passive is increase max health by 100, grants 1% lifesteal and 5% reduced damage, then again for every 125 missing health. Taking damage reduces cooldown of its ability by 5 seconds, once every 5 seconds. What I found that Iceborn was really good at was essentially doing a lot of burst damage that contributed towards going over the threshold for a frost proc. Meaning, it did what a Pangar Lantern in the past, or a Pangar Lantern, a spammable Pangar Lantern, would do. Where it would grant a lot of frost damage, enough so that it would be close to frost procking the behemoth. And it's interesting because the more I think about it, the more I realize that there's different roles in these classes. Iceborn isn't necessarily the least damaging class or the least useful class because it's mainly revolving around survivability. It contributes a lot to the frost proc, more so than just a Bastion, for example, running Pangar Lantern. And it's interesting to think about because the more you realize that each one has a different role in group composition, the more you realize that there is some sort of synergy that exists if your group has these different classes laid out in terms of its composition. Iceborn may be the class with the most survivability. Hell, some people would argue that Bastion would be the one. However, it's not necessarily that makes up Iceborn. It's mostly its instant. It's interesting. It gives it plus 10% lifesteal and invulnerability. Meaning, if there is an unsafe boop, it technically can time itself well for what? Riftstalker, Aether Charge, and just absolutely deck him. It would be, and not worry about trading at all or something if you were a Strikers player. There's a lot of things that you could do, and sure, it may be situational, but it actually holds a quite efficient role in being able to apply frost proc faster than all other classes. Which, it's respectable. It's something that you definitely need in killing a behemoth quick. The next class I'd like to review is Windfury, and of course, it's the last one. Huzzah! Instant is to consume a stack of Windfury to instantly teleport/dash a distance in front of you, dealing a 500 damage on exit. Using this ability refreshes the Windfury stack cooldown. The passive is increased damage by 5% for every applied mobility perk. Every time you dodge through an attack, gain a stack of Windfury, which increases attack speed by 5% for 60 seconds. This effect stacks up to 5 times. In my honest opinion, Windfury also still has a place in some type of group composition. It may not be meta. I don't think it ever will be. But having quality of life aspects for classes or for weapons that don't have that much mobility, and giving them the ability to essentially dash or teleport a large amount of distance, like a Strikers player would, and keep up with a fight more so than other players, it has its uses. I personally would use Windfury quite a bit if I were playing Hammer or Axe, or maybe even Repeaters. The whole Windfury instant acts like a Koshai's Bloom Lantern tap. But it's much more consistent and a lot more frequent, considering it refreshes after every dodge. I personally would love to use this as a repeater, or a class that specialized in part breaks or keeping up with the beam as much as you can to ensure that you're focusing a specific part or something like that. Windfury can provide that for classes that don't have the mobility to do so. And even though it might not be the most meta Omnicell, I mean, I don't really see the 500 damage being that big of a difference, nor any mobility cell perks or increase of 5% for every mobility cell really that big of a deal either. It still has its uses, and it still can be used fairly well because of its main utility. I'm quite interested to see how far they're willing to go in terms of Omnicell variation, because keep in mind, each and every single one of these Omnicells has a distinct role that can be played in group composition, like I said when I was introducing Iceborn. And if given enough Omnicells that start to do what? AoE buffs, or possibly apply certain debuffs on behemoths, or maybe one that one day will get like some kind of ridiculous, like, it does a shock proc and terror proc at the same time, Omnicell type of deal. Like, there could be so much that could be going into Theorycraft more so than what was originally we're used to. Like back in the day when we were just restricted to the cells and the builds that they provided, the Omnicells can actually be somewhat of a good system. There is still a gripe, however, that I have with this, and it's that it's being introduced a little bit too quickly, especially since they're already taking Discipline and Iceborn away from most players. I, for one, can adapt quickly to most systems and classes because I'm curious to see what Dauntless has to offer and what they plan on making in terms of creativity and variation. But if I were to speak on behalf of most players that I know, they don't exactly want a lot of these things taken away. Discipline, Iceborn, I completely understand. This makes total sense. But to take away attack speed, and to introduce this system too quickly to players and not give a little bit more insight beforehand is not exactly the best way to approach this. A lot of people need a lot of leniency in order for them to truly understand a topic and be fully, not fully down, but at least more down than they would be to try out a system or to give it a shot than if it was just abruptly placed upon their shoulders. Personally, just to give everyone my own honest opinion, I think Omnicells is going a good direction. After playing these Omnicells and understanding how each one of them is used, there is a lot more variety to group composition than there ever was before. It could make things a lot more fun. There could be a lot more communication in just general hunts with people talking about each other and saying, save your ice lands for this specific time within the fight where the behemoth is down or whatever, or that the Bastion player could be saving their leap forward for stagger damage at some point later. Like, there's more things that you could do now. It may not be the most complex of systems, it may not be the most complex of abilities, but just knowing that they're going a direction where it needs a little bit more prep and maybe a little bit more coordination in order to pull off a more consistent and more quick behemoth kill or mana or whatever, it breathes new life into the game that wasn't exactly there before. And I can't help but respect that, because it's something that we never really had. We were relying too much on new behemoths, and we were relying too much on the whole old system to kind of give us something new. But if Phoenix Labs really couldn't find something new within the old system to give, then if this is their solution, I completely understand. Just be careful about taking stuff away, because if take too much away from us that we've originally been used to, of course everyone's going to get really angry. It's a big risk to take, I understand. And maybe there is some underlying reason that they're doing this. Regardless, personally, I do like Omnicells. Not too bad. Not too bad. I expected them to be worse, but they're actually a lot better than I thought. But yeah, guys, next video I will be doing, I will hopefully be doing a Blaze escalation, a heroic one. I just hope I don't crash every time I get into like round 2 or round 3. It's quite annoying and it happens quite frequently. I'm not entirely sure why, but I will give it my best shot. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope all of you guys have a great one. Take care, everybody.